And we're back. Hello, everybody. I know if you were in that last conversation, you was like, girl, I thought we had a little break. I meant little, okay? Because we already back with Tomesha. Tomesha, how are you?
I am excited and humbled, honestly, to be doing this. This is very full circle for me.
I'm super excited to talk about
Mhm.
all of your work and to talk about your journey. Oh, excuse me. In particular, because one of my favorite things to photograph and talk about as a photographer is hair. And
Oh, come on.
an incredible project called Wash Day that kind of just like blew you up entirely and turned into all these different things for you. So I understand that you used to be a lawyer and are now a self-taught documentary photographer. Can you give us a little bit of that journey, how you got here?
Okay, yes, a little bit because that story is so lengthy. But yeah, I practiced law for a long time, some over 10 years. I honestly can't think of the exact number right now. Before I got like what I call a creative itch. I'm just gonna call it that because it's a lot more to that part. But I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I started to kind of reevaluate my career. And I realized that this is not novel to me. There are some other speakers who have mentioned this too, where you just kind of feel like something's there that's not being utilized. There's a talent, there's something that's not quite. Um, and so what I started to do at that time was just explore because I had no idea what I wanted to do. I didn't have a creative background. I didn't take art and I didn't do any of that stuff. So for me, it was like, okay, well, what kind of careers or what kind of things can someone do when they want to be a creative? Um, I went and started studying art direction, copywriting, because those were like specific and defined roles that you could go to an agency and do. And so it felt like, okay, that made sense. Like, let me go to school and learn how to do those things. Those weren't quite it for a lot of reasons, but I started working at Spanx. Are you familiar with the company Spanx?
Yeah.
Um, as legal counsel. And that, if you know anything about Sarah Blakely or what the culture of that company is like, but it's very like fun, energetic, like I don't know, maybe 98% women. We were always having parties, always having events. It was a very pursue your dreams kind of environment. So we were always encouraged to try new things and to be daring and go for it. And so for me, I was like, okay, this is a great place to be an attorney and also pursue creative things. So I started looking into fashion design. Of course, I had friends who were designers at Spanx, and so they could teach me how to sew and teach me how to use different fabrics. Um, Woodworking, I started doing that, building stuff in my house. I snatched all the cabinets out of my kitchen and replaced them with open shelving. Mixed media artwork. I started just pulling together materials from here and there and making things. Videography, that is what I thought was going to be my thing. I thought that I was going to be a filmmaker. Not that there's not still time that can still happen, but that's kind of that was kind of the road that was like, this is it. Filmmaking is my thing. Um, but strangely enough, filmmaking and making videos got me interested in photography. Um, Now stop me if you need to interject, but I was taking pictures with my cell phone at a friend's kid's birthday party. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is kind of fun. I'm feeling this." Like there was something about capturing those moments as they were happening that really just kind of felt like I was at home.
Yeah.
Um, and so I was at a good friend's house. Her and her husband like disappeared into I don't know where they went. They disappeared and reappeared with a camera bag. And they were like, what do you think of this camera? I was like, I think it was like a Canon T3 or something like that.
Yeah.
Think of this camera. And I was like, cool. It's a camera I could probably go and pick up if I decide to really pursue this thing. And they were like, well, no, do you want this camera? I was like, you guys are not out here just gifting me this
Right, a whole camera.
camera. But they were, and they were like, we believe in you. You want to try this photography thing. We're not using it. Just take it. And I just started taking pictures. I maybe got on YouTube a few times to figure out what an aperture was. Like, what is an aperture?
Okay.
what well, ISO, isometric, like what is this? So just kind of learning all those little things and just started taking pictures of my kids and just started putting them on Instagram. And then that was just the beginning of everything.
Wow, this is so beautiful. I love that not only your story, but so many other stories we've had this weekend are about
Yep.
people finding this niche, this path, because somebody else believed in them.
Come on.
Else being like, you know what, I have this equipment, this resource, this whatever, and I believe in you. And so I'm just so excited to talk to just more women who have this experience. But okay, so cool. Bam.
Yeah.
Now you're a photographer, you got some new gear, you're doing the things. How do we get to this focus of focusing on the Black experience? Like, at least when I look at your work, that's what stands out to me the most. How did you find that like that was going to be your niche and your focus?
Boy. Okay. Okay. Let me start from here because I can approach this a lot of different ways, but
True. That is a big question.
it is a big question, but I can do this. I believe in myself.
I believe.
So I I noticed a couple of things. One, I noticed when I was starting to learn photography that I really enjoyed storytelling. So that's one thing. I also recognized that I was drawn to hair for some reason. It didn't really matter who I was photographing. It was I would really focus on what their hair looked like and what their hair was doing and wanting to kind of really bring the hair into the image as like just an important piece of the puzzle. So I knew that that was happening. Um, let's see. I when I started taking pictures and I was kind of playing with the idea of leaving my job, right? I didn't even get into the leaving of the job part, but we're going to move on from that. When I started playing around with that idea, I was like, okay, well, I've got to make money. Like I've got this has to be, a financially like this has to be a financial decision that makes sense. Or yeah. So my focus, of course, was getting clients and trying to see if I could earn a living doing this. But
Right.
in the back of my mind was like, but I also want to tell stories that I want to tell that someone may not necessarily pay me to tell. I want to be able to do personal projects and things like that. And these were terms I was learning on the fly, right? These were things that as I was looking at other photographers and what they were doing, they were talking about personal projects and passion projects. I'm like, ah, yeah, sounds like something I want to do. And
Yeah.
so as I started thinking about, my desire to tell stories, my desire to focus on hair, that kind of evolved into wanting to focus on Black hair. I'm a Black person. I have a lot of stories and a lot of experiences that involve hair. It was quite some time before I realized that I wanted this project to be about wash day. It was maybe some months of me just kind of thinking about it and really sitting with the idea of like hair, okay, Black hair. When it comes to Black hair, what do I want to talk about? Like, what do I want to say? Are there issues I want to confront? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Um, I felt like it was important to talk about the inherent beauty of natural hair. Somewhere around this time, my daughter was in kindergarten. Okay, and now she is very much not in kindergarten, so it's a long time
Oh,
ago. Um, Actually, this wasn't around that same time, but this had happened and it left an imprint in my mind. But she was in kindergarten and I had always had natural hair from the time she was born. Like she's only ever seen me with natural hair. And she was surrounded by other Black women who had natural hair. So I just felt like she's fine. I don't need to really dig into the details of like good hair versus bad hair, like this whole
right.
thing. She had one white teacher, and that was all she needed to see to decide that that hair was the hair that she wanted, and the hair on her head was not the hair that she wanted. And I realized that I needed to be more intentional about teaching her the beauty of what was already on her head, the beauty of the way that her hair grew. And so with that in the back of my mind, I was like, oh, how wonderful would it be to create something, right, that my daughter and other daughters and other sons and other kids could see, right, to show them that they're beautiful the way they are. So
Yeah.
that kind of helped me to develop like, okay, Black hair, okay, the beauty of Black hair, representation, all of that. So that's kind of the foundational part of why I decided to focus on Black hair.
My goodness. Well, let's go ahead and get into it. I'm about to pull up your website and I'd love if you can talk to us a little bit about Wash Day. Um
Yeah.
And
Um,
how do you get to that point? So, you come up with this concept, you have your mission behind the concept. How does it turn into a book? How does it get picked up by all these publications? What was that
girl.
process like?
Yes. So the first step was figuring out that I wanted to focus on Black hair. And I'll say what I did was I spent some time looking at other photography that focused on afros and natural hair to try to figure out what did I want to take pictures of? Did I want to do portraits? Did I want to do just really zoomed in, macro photography of the hair texture? Like, what did I want to do? And I was looking at images and I came across an image of this Black woman sitting on the couch and her daughter was sitting on the floor in front of her and she was doing her hair. And in that moment, I realized that I wanted to do something generational, that I wanted to do something that told the story of our hair care rituals, of kind of the way that we as Black women are teaching our kids how to love their hair, how to do their hair. Because I came up at a time, I mean, I'm a little older than you, but I came up at a time where many of us were not wearing our hair natural. Okay. Many of us weren't doing this. And then the natural hair movement happened, and we were reevaluating these Eurocentric ideas of what our hair ought to look like. And so many of us are passing on this knowledge of how to care for our hair, this kind of acceptance of our hair textures to our kids. So
Yeah.
I wanted to be able to tell that generational story in this as well. And so I was having wash day with my daughters one day, like as I was like trying to figure all this stuff out. Um, and I was looking at them and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm thinking about the process that I'm about to embark upon with washing their hair and conditioning and deep conditioning and all the time and love that goes into the way that I care for their hair and the intentionality behind making sure that they feel loved on when
Yeah.
I'm doing their hair, right? So in that moment, I went and got my camera while I was like trying to wash their hair. I went and got my camera and just started taking pictures. Obviously, it was kind of hard to like do their hair and take photos. I was like this trying to do. Um, but then from then, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I knew exactly what this project was going to be. Okay, we're going to shoot wash day. Now, okay, that's part one of the answer to your question. As far as taking this concept and then getting it to the point where it becomes a book, I started shooting Wash Day fall of 2020. I got the idea probably, I would say January of 2020, maybe somewhere in there. And then, of course, COVID and everything was put on hold, right? And so, fall of 2020, I start shooting it. And it was tricky because, of course, the COVID. And I really just reached out to women that I felt like would be comfortable with me coming into their homes because this is intimate, right? Like, this is
Yeah.
me in your house with your children, like doing something that traditionally is not something that we show people. Um,
Exactly.
and so there was a lot of trust that needed to be established, not just because there was like a pandemic going on, but also because of the nature of the photography. And so I started really small. And once I got, I would say maybe 3 to 4 families shot and figured out kind of the editing and the way that I wanted these to look, um, I think I probably talked to maybe just a couple of people. I was very, I didn't post any of this on Instagram. I didn't talk to a lot of people about it because I just wanted to keep it close to the chest and develop it and let it develop without a lot of like, I just wanted to develop it. And so once I got to a point where I felt like it was ready, I wrote down, I wrote down a list of things that I wanted to happen. Um, I was an unknown photographer. I had just started, right? I had maybe, I don't know, 500 followers on Instagram. I was relatively unknown. And I was like, I want this to be a book. This needs to be a book. But I feel like I need some heat behind this project before I can convince a publisher that this is something that they should, back. So I wrote down a list of things. It's like, I want to get this featured in some art publications, some media attention. I want to get featured in an art exhibit. Through conversations with another friend of mine who is an author and an aspiring published author, I learned that literary agents were a thing. I didn't know what that was.
Yeah.
So I wrote down, I want to get a literary agent. And then the final thing that I wanted was a book deal. The year 2021, every single thing on that list happened in the order in which I wrote it.
Come
It
on,
was like,
for manifesting.
girl, it was crazy. It was 2021 is the year of yes, is what I call it, because obviously I worked very hard in developing the idea and everything, but there was obviously some fear about putting it out there. But I knew that I had to put it out there in order to see those things that I had listed, you know. So I started submitting it to different art magazines and things like that. And I got word in January of 2021 that I had been selected to be printed in this art magazine. And then after that, there was other media attention that just kind of followed that. Summer of 2021, I got selected to have two of the pieces in an art exhibit in Atlanta. And then once all of that was happening, I felt like there was enough. Oh, let me not skip this. Okay, so through Black women photographers, I got introduced to an editor for Parents magazine. Okay,
Hey, yeah.
so yes, and so I remember submitting this series to that editor, and she was like, "Oh, yes, we're doing this." And so that was another really great feature that I could like take to a literary agent and like say, "Look, these are all the things. This is the heat. This is like the swell, I guess you could call it, behind this project, and I really feel like it's time to do this." So this is a really long story. I feel like I've been talking a really long time,
So
but
necessary steps.
yeah. So once I kind of got that together, I started pulling together a proposal. Okay. What I thought a proposal was and what it actually is are very different, but I did my best, right? So I had images and I had, why I think this story is important, why I think this should be a book and all of that. And I started the process of figuring out which agents that I wanted to send it to. Okay, I'm gonna take a break.
Okay.
Okay. Finding a literary agent, I think that I've heard a lot of people talk about how difficult it can be. And I think a lot of the difficulty can come from sending work to agents that don't rep the type of work that you're doing. And so I was really intentional about figuring out which agents to send the work to. Matter. Okay. One of the things like other photography books that had to do with Black beauty and things like that, right? And look to the acknowledgments that those authors wrote, because a lot of times they would thank their agent, right? And I would write that person's name down. And then I think I looked up, Black agents in Atlanta, Black agents, because I just felt like for this story, it needed a Black agent to um, really get behind the work and really believe in the work, to connect with the work and sell the work, right? Um, and I had a friend at the time who she was sending proposals to, or sending her manuscript actually to so many agents and was getting nothing but rejection. So I was kind of gearing up for this really long process, right? A friend of mine happened to hear this agent speaking on a podcast, right? And at the time, this was 2021. So, of course, the desire for Black stories was at its height.
Right.
Um, and so this particular agent, she was white. And she was saying, listen, we are putting work from Black authors at the top of our list. And even if we don't decide to rep you, we will respond with feedback.
Okay.
This is clearly because even if I don't want to utilize this agent, this is feedback that I could use to then, go to the next, right? So I sent my proposal um the same day she responded. And the next day we hopped on a call. And by the next day, I had signed with her.
Ooh, my goodness. Your
When
career
you know
so fast.
it was so quick. And I honestly, it happened so fast that I was like, wait. should I not
Right.
talk to some other, and so I would tell someone else to talk to more than one.
Sure. But I
Tell
mean,
someone else to do that. But when I knew it was right, when I got on the phone
yeah.
with her, I knew she was the one. And I have uh I have learned that to be true as I've gone through this process. She is the most amazing. I've even talked to people who are like, some agents, when they sell your book, that's it. They move on. They've done the work. They've sold your book and they collect their check and then they move on. No, she is in it. She's in my meetings. She advocates for me when things are not going the way that they should. She has a ton of experience. So she knows what things should and should not look like. And so she's able to step in and she's so
Well, maybe
um
with that, I'm glad you said that because it has me thinking about like a lot of Black photographers, especially us Black women photographers, we be up in that Slack talking to each other about like what we're all going through, right?
yeah.
And one thing that comes up a lot, I feel, is when we're submitting proposals or reaching out to get portfolio reviews and stuff like that. A lot of the people we photograph tend to be other Black people, and it feels kind of crazy to be like, hey, by the way, I only shoot Black people, or maybe I mainly shoot Black people, and that can feel kind of like scary to say sometimes to people and stand in, but also like sometimes you're criticized for that as a photographer, where it's like,
Yeah.
where's your range? Like, do you
Mm.
only shoot Black people? And it's like, yeah, I only shoot Black people. But what do
Okay.
you have to say to that type of criticism?
I haven't gotten that. That has
Oh,
not.
that's beautiful.
And again, I think that there are a lot of things that I have not had happen because I just haven't been doing it long enough. Okay. So, I will say from a business perspective, that has been a question. Um, Not like a critique, but just a question because of like, you want to have somewhat of like, you don't want people to think you're not going to photograph them. Like, don't call me, I'm not going to photograph you because you're not Black. Like,
Yeah.
um, but from an art perspective, that just didn't that was never really a concern. So I feel really blessed about that. I think too timing, the timing in which I was sending this work,
Yeah.
you know, um, things are changing, unfortunately, but
Okay. They are.
Lord help us.
But
But at that time, it was like, send us all the Black things. We want all, want all the Black things. So it was very rewarding in that way that, publishing is pretty white. Um, so I was concerned about that. But the reception was so good. Again, I think timing had something to do with it, but then the story itself is a story that needs to be told, right? So there are a couple things going on there. Did that
okay.
answer your question?
No, I think so. Absolutely. I think it's fair that like you and plenty of us took advantage of the time that we were in, that people were looking for our stories in 2020 and 2021. And it's unfortunate that those feelings are changing. Like, I mean, we could see that even just with ads. Like, a lot of us didn't get reached out to do like a Black
Yeah.
History Month feature or something like that, you know? And so we all are feeling the effects of the changes that these institutions are going through when it was cool for
Come on, it was
maybe
cool.
right? Or maybe even they thought it was just appropriate. But you know what I'm saying? Like you got in how you got in, ain't nothing wrong with that. But moving back to wash day really quickly, I
Yeah.
over here got a little emotional looking at this photo. There was a few of them, but in particular this photo. Um,
Oh, yay.
because for me, like I said, I love hair. I love photographing hair. I love these two hair textures together. This is
Yes.
really an adult and a child, and we can assume relationship. Maybe it's a mom, maybe it's an aunt. But then it's also the baby's facial expression. Like, she's crying, maybe because it's hurt, maybe because she tenderheaded,
Yeah.
maybe soap got in her eye. But it's like obviously I'm a little biased as a viewer because I have been in this situation. So I can put
Right.
myself there, I can put other kids in my life there. But this moment feels so special to me because how you mentioned, this is a part of our culture that we don't really show anybody who isn't in it. I mean, in some ways, boys can even get left out of this process for real. And we have protected it pretty much our entire culture,
Yes,
you know?
protect it. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
perfect.
And I'm curious about like, I don't know, maybe it's the ethics of that, or maybe just your feelings around like when you were in this process of like, okay, I'm about to document and I want people to see this part of our culture. Like, what part of that, like, how did that feel for you?
Your questions are so good. Are you also a therapist?
Thank
Um, oh my gosh. Okay, a couple of things. One, I felt at the time, and I still feel very honored that the there was a lot of trust that I was given to do this. I think that initially when I talked to these women and um had like an interview with them and explained what I wanted to do, the reception and the response was like, "Oh my gosh, yes. Yes, let's do." Like I didn't have one person to hesitate. Not one.
That's beautiful.
No, actually, one did because she didn't like how her kitchen looked, but otherwise, there was no hesitation, and I think because I don't know if it was a sense of we were in 2020. Let's remember there was there was almost like a new level of I'm not gonna say new level. I'm trying to word this right, but just like a Black Pride movement that was happening at the time. And I think people wanted to show this more than maybe in previous years. And I think that I just got a lot of excitement around it. Um, but I definitely wanted to make sure that we weren't making this look like okay. So a lot of pictures that I took, there are tears. Like you do see them. I don't have a book full of all of the teary moments that happened, because sometimes the detangling process can be uncomfortable. For that particular photo that you showed in the bathtub,
Yeah.
I think the water was getting in her eyes, and she was just like, "I've had it, mom. I've had it." Um, and so those moments do happen. So I have them in the book because they're honest and they're real and they're part of the process. But what I also tried to show was the lengths that these mothers went to ensure that their children had one different experiences than they did surrounding hair care, but then also were as comfortable as they could make them. So there is an element of self-care in this book. I highlight that a lot.
Yeah.
Um, Kind of like trying to reclaim the process of wash day and the process of Black hair care and Black hair care rituals as self-care. Um, and so I talk a lot about that. And I wanted this to be a celebration of that and a celebration of our textures. I have a variety of textures. I think I've covered as many as I could, but
Yeah.
they range from tighter textures to the looser ones to show the variety of our hair, to show that all of this is beautiful. Um, and so for me, I think the bigger conversation was showcasing our hair as uniquely and inherently beautiful. And that's why I didn't want to do portraits. I didn't want the hair to be done. I
Yeah.
wanted it to be undone. I wanted it to be in its natural state. I mean, obviously when it's wet, it's going to be a little different than when it's dry, but I just really wanted to show that our hair and our rituals and our practices are just so beautiful, and the reclaiming those processes and reclaiming those rituals is also very beautiful.
Yes, absolutely. I feel like I can go on and on about the ritual of it all. Um, because for me, it's even like these ones right here. Like how some people use the pool noodle and some people use the rolled up towel. Some
Yep.
people it's just like you got to put your hand like this and go into this.
Yeah.
And I love that you featured all of these different families' experiences and how they do it. I mean, even this, like we had the first girl in the tub, this girl's laying on her back on the sink. There was
Yeah.
another young girl where, you got to pull out the iPad and sometimes granddad got to come over and just keep her relaxed while you're doing the detangling. And it just feels so
Yeah.
special to me. And it really makes me feel like, and yeah, like look at this moment, like she's crying and it's just like, I can hear him. I can hear him coaching her through, like, it's okay. Like, I know, like, not too much longer.
They even took a break and like played when she got really uncomfortable. So I'm like, there's this there was a lot of care, a
Yeah,
lot of care that I don't, when I was coming up, that wasn't priority. That
absolutely
just
not.
wasn't a priority. And I think that a lot of these moms, and actually this particular mom, she spoke to that. She was like, when I was coming up, I have trauma from my hair care experiences, and I want to make sure that my child does not have that.
Yeah,
And so she had the best setup. So you see this device that she's laying on. It's called a shampoo buddy. And then she had the iPad, and you don't see it in this image, but she has, yeah, the snacks. She's set up.
baby
Okay.
girl living life. Okay, she's carefree. She's pampered.
But also, even though all of this was happening, she still got uncomfortable and tears still came. So you can do what you can do. I wanted to show the reality of all of it to the best of my ability.
I think you did that wonderfully. And if we haven't already, we're definitely going to drop the link in the chat to order Wash Day by
Yeah.
Tomesha because this is so beautiful and I need everybody to have one of these in their home.
Me too.
Okay. But okay, let's talk about how you became a published author.
Yes,
Can
yes,
you let us know, are you self-published? Did you find a publisher? What was that process like? How can somebody make a book themselves?
yes. So I am not I'm not self-published, so I don't know a lot about that process, but I will talk about my experience. So getting a literary agent, if you want to find a publisher, I feel like for me was the most critical thing I could have done because I knew very little about publishing. I know that you can submit proposals to publishers, some of them. Some publishers do um, accept proposals when you don't have an agent, but some of them don't. So for me, I was like, I hesitate to say it like this. At the time, I was like, I want to do this as big as I can because I feel like this story needs to be as big as it can be. And again, I didn't know what that meant, but I just wanted to do everything I could to get the biggest possible like splash I could. So the literary agent was one of those steps that I found critical for me. My agent helped me pull together a beautiful proposal. I it was beautiful. Okay. And so what she does and what she did with the proposal once we finalized it was she would send it to editors that she knew or that she knew repped or edited the type of work that we were doing. Right. So she has relationships with people. She knows what an editor's list is and the types of books that they want to see. So that was valuable. I mean, I could have figured that out, but for instance, the editor that I ended up going with, she knew that she had acquired another book about Wash Day from her previous publisher that she was working at. She had to leave that publisher and go to a new publisher, and she didn't get to stay on with that work. And so she knew that, hey, you did the Wash Day thing before. You had to kind of leave that project behind when you went to your new publishing house. I have this other Wash Day project. It's completely different. It's photography versus the other one was a graphic novel. Are you interested? And of course she was like, this is yes, yes, so things like that were so helpful. Helpful is not the right word. That is not enough.
That's so real.
That's not sufficient. Um, so anyway, what happened there is she would submit this to the editors, and then the editors that were interested would set up meetings, and we would get on Zoom and talk about the vision for the book and talk about just kind of talk about the details, like what they thought would be a good look for the book, the size, things like that. And we just kind of decide if we're on the same page. Um, so once you go through the process, or once we went through the process of talking to different editors, my agent set a closing date. And what that is a date when all of the interested publishers submit their proposals to you, or their offer. Okay, so she set the closing date. It was in December of 2021. December 2021, she set a closing date. So, okay, for me, I would have been fine with any publisher. I mean, the fact that anyone would even want to publish this would have been sufficient for my purposes because this was the first series I had ever done. Um, I didn't know what I was looking for, so I would have been completely fine with, whatever. But I ended up getting two of the big five publishers, and I didn't know what that was before any of this, but there were five of the biggest, and I got two of them who submitted offers on my closing date, which was completely unexpected. I still pinch myself about that because
Right.
it
That's
felt
amazing.
unreal. It felt unreal. It felt unreal. And so on the closing date, when it was Penguin Random House and HarperCollins, they submitted offers. And I'm thinking, I call my agent. I was like, this is so exciting. Okay, how do we choose?
Right.
Like, no, that's not what we do now. We go to auction.
Oh,
What are you
what
talking about?
is this? Right.
Auction. That means that these two publishers, Penguin Random House and HarperCollins, bid against each other.
I mean, it's giving baddie to me.
It's giving unbelievable. It was one of the most exciting days of my life.
Yeah.
Getting emails from getting email. I'm just like, wow, getting emails from my agent all day, like, oh, HarperCollins just raised their offer, and then Penguin just raised their offer. And when I say HarperCollins and Penguin, they have imprints that work on certain types of books. So for this book, for this kind of book, a visual book, they have the imprint that I went with was Clarkson Potter. Clarkson Potter. Um, I don't remember what the imprint was for Harper. I think it was just Harper Design, I think. Um, and so they were going back and forth all day, and I'm just like screaming
Right?
all,
I can imagine you just at
all day,
you're like,
running through the house like, ah! I mean, it was insane. It was insane. And so at the end of it, they kind of make their final offer, and then me and my agent have a conversation. And I honestly didn't go with the highest bidder. I didn't.
oh,
I went with Clarkson, Penguin, because the editor was a Black woman and we really connected. Her offer was so beautifully written. And I
yeah,
could just tell that she got it. Like she got it. And she could really relate to the experience. And I knew that this journey was going to be a long one. I knew that I would need someone editing this book who is somewhat familiar with the terminology, with the practices, with the rituals. And so that was important. And so I went with her, and that was the best possible decision. I mean, I
yeah.
don't know what it would have been like going with the other one. I'm not going to say that that would have been bad, but there were things that I needed to bounce off of someone else who also understood this ritual of wash day, right? So it really helped.
That's super important. I love that you mentioned that sometimes the most valuable thing isn't the check that you're going to receive from it because half the time maybe we don't know like you said, but what if you would have spent half that time just explaining what some of these terms were, what this
Right.
ritual is, why it's important to the
Yes.
publisher when that's not your role, that's not your mission. Your mission is to get this book into people who already know what this is,
Yeah.
make him feel seen and things like that. So I love that. That's such a important thing I think to remember for folks in the chat who might be hoping to drop a photo book themselves or any other type of publishing where it's like, how do I determine what is right for me? And I think it's a little
Yes.
like that.
There are so many other things and other aspects about this, but one thing that sticks out to me when I think back on making that decision is not long after I accepted this book deal, and I'm just like riding high on one of the most amazing experiences of my life. We have a house fire. Okay. Now, thank God the house didn't burn down. The fire actually is kind of scary. It started in our crawl space. So under the house.
That's
You know
terrible.
that that was a thing that could happen. Okay. The fire starts under the house, and suddenly, me and my husband, we're home. Thank God. First of all, we were both working from home, so we were home. Okay. And this happened during the day while my kids were at school. So these are two blessings that I do not take for granted.
Right.
And smoke coming up out of the vents, and we're like, what's going on? Long story short, there's a fire. Fire department comes. They put the fire out. It doesn't, get past the crawl space, but we have to move out of our house for a while. Um, and so my year 2022 started with this moving out of the house, living in Airbnbs for 2 and 3 weeks at a time, and trying
Wow.
to handle and manage all of this while also like, wait, but I just got this book deal. Okay, so let me tell you this. I was silly enough, okay, to think that I would have the book. Okay, so this was 2022, right? I was silly enough to think that I could finish the book by spring 2022. Okay.
Oh, you were brave.
I was out here being crazy. Okay. And so for the HarperCollins offer, they had that date that it was like April 2022. They had that date in the offer. Penguin had let's see, I think it was spring 2023, okay,
Okay.
in their offer. Imagine if I had picked Harper.
Okay. And something crazy like that happening.
I thought about it later and I was like, God, you are so wow. Because I had, even though I was behind schedule a little bit because I had a fire and everything, I was still able to finish my manuscript and my first draft, I guess you'd call it, on time because I had a year versus the 4 months I was trying to give myself like a crazy person.
Yeah, shout out to that. Which, speaking of which, like you said, there's some essays inside this book.
Yeah.
Is this your first time pursuing writing in this way? Like, what was that part of the process like?
Yeah. Okay. So, wow. At first, of course, the photography is the hero here. And so I knew that I wanted to talk about the natural hair journeys because I just feel like there's just something there that was important to me to talk about some of the struggles that these women went through when they were deciding to go natural. So I wanted to do that, but they were going to be like these little like little like maybe 2 or 3 paragraphs, right? Um, as I was working on my first delivery, and it was like half the book, I was writing these little tiny essays, and as I was writing, there was just so much history that I felt like I needed to talk about, right? So there was a mom that I was writing about when she went natural. She looked at her hair texture and was like, I don't know about this. Let's get on YouTube and find some influencers who can help me make my texture look a little better. And so she was following influencers who had very different hair textures from her. But she was like, I feel like if I learn all the things and I find all the products, I can make my hair look sleek and shiny like theirs. And it
Um,
just never worked out. And I was like, that's just not enough. Like, I feel like I need to talk about why she wanted her hair to be that texture. I feel like I need to dig into the history of good hair, bad hair, texturism and stuff. So it became this bigger, conversation. So each essay kind of has a theme. So texturism may be a theme, the Crown Act for some, microaggressions at work. Like we dig into a lot of things with regard to natural hair. But let me back up because I skipped something very important.
okay.
I had never written anything. And so when I was talking to editors, I actually, no, before I started talking to editors, I had talked to my agent about the writing. I was like, I've never written anything. I don't know if I feel comfortable writing this, right? And she was like, well, maybe you should try getting a writing partner. Like, that's a thing. Get someone to help you write it. And then you focus on the photos and then y'all just kind of do a collab. So I reached out to a friend of mine who's a writer. She has a book. She's a published author. She has 2 books. And I was like, hey, girl, hey, about to start working on this book. Like, do you want to be my writing partner? And I thought she would say yes, but she said that she didn't have time. She's like, I don't have the bandwidth. I'm so sorry, da da da. And rather than continuing to ask more people, I was like, you know what? I think I'm just gonna try to do it on my own.
Maybe it's a
I
sign.
was I was still a little bit reluctant. So as I was on the phone with the editor from Harper, actually, I was telling her, I was like, listen, I've never written anything before. I'm just like trying to be real with you. Okay. I'm
Yeah.
trying to be I've never done this. Do you think I need a writing partner? She was like, no. She was like, because for my proposal, I had to write sample material. So I had to write something, right? So they were able to get a sense of my writing style and the voice that I would use for the book. She was like, no, you don't. Like, I love the way you wrote this. I was like, what?
Me.
It was like, and it would be so strange because these stories are so intimate. You're talking about your experience and interaction with these people. Like it'd be weird for someone else to write that. And I was like, you know what? And what that showed me was, going back, I'm, a former lawyer. You go to law school, you're trying to be perfect. Like the first law firm that I worked at, it was about being perfect. They literally told us, you have to be perfect.
Oh my
This is
God.
what we were told.
That's
Okay.
dangerous.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And it was one of those big firm sweatshop kind of places where like, and so if you make a mistake, if you have a typo in something that you did, it was like this big deal. Like I might as well quit being a lawyer because I had a typo in my draft. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So you come from that background of like a lot of training and, going to school for a lot of years for something and then something that you just kind of not gonna say walk into, but that you go into without that training, without that background. Like I didn't go to school for photography. I didn't, study at a school for photography. I didn't study writing. I didn't study, so I was like, I don't know. I don't have the credentials,
Mm,
and in that moment with that editor from Harper, I just kind of thought through all of that. And I was like, I think that sometimes as women, and especially as Black women, we feel like we need all these credentials
mhm.
that some people don't feel like they need those and they just go and do stuff.
Right.
They're successful. And we don't always need the now sometimes we do. Okay, so let me not say that that's unnecessary all the time, but there are some things that you can just do because you have the ability, the talent, the story to tell. And so I'm just grateful that that friend said no because
You
now I'm a writer apparently.
Because what might your life look like if you just go make a book one day and write and shoot and you've never done it before? And what might it look like? It might
That's
look
my
like the
whole, yeah.
background Tomesha got right now. Look,
That's my whole story. It's a story of just trying things. That's it.
that's
Because all of
valuable.
this is just like, I'm gonna try this and see how it works out.
And then think about all of this. You trying all of this stuff, which I love that you gave yourself permission to just be creative for that era of your life of trying all of these different creative outlets.
Yes.
I have a question in the chat that says, "Thank you for creating this beautiful body of work. What did the children think of the photos?" And on top of that, I also want to ask, what is it like balancing all of this and motherhood? Because you said you got two kids.
Okay. Okay. So this is something. So the back in 2021, I got selected to be a part of this art exhibit. The very first. And this piece and another piece were selected to be in the show. And so one of the little girls who was photographed in the image, she came with her mom to the exhibit and saw herself up on
Mm.
a gallery wall presented as beautiful artwork. And that piece actually sold that piece. Um, and the look in her eye, like the feeling of pride, it was just you. I don't know. There was something about that moment that was really, really precious
Yeah.
because that was what I was going for. I wanted her and other Black children with these hair textures to see this work and say, oh my gosh, like one, there are other girls and boys, because there are boys in the book as well. There are other girls and boys who have this process. There are other girls and boys who have these hair textures, and they are in a book or they're up on a gallery wall and it's beautiful. And I look like that. And so like I want, that's what I want. And so that's kind of the response I've been getting from the kids. I just feel honored to have been able to do something that these kids can see themselves literally in and feel seen. That's the feedback I've been getting from parents that their kids feel seen. I'm like, oh my God, I could give something like that to people. It's just kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy. As far as balancing,
Another really big question. I do understand.
you know what I will say? Couple things. One, I'm grateful that my kids are able to see me doing this. I'm grateful that they're able to see me trying something new and it going well, and not being afraid to fail at something. It's important for them to see that. And okay, so after I got okay, it's so long. After I got my book deal, okay, no, before I got the book deal, I decided to apply for jobs in advertising. Okay. I had left law. I was like, I don't think I want to do that anymore, but I don't know if this book thing is going to work, right? So
Right.
I got something. So I applied to ad agencies. Okay. After I got the book deal, I got a call from one of those agencies and they were like, hey, so, I was like, book deal now. And I don't think that I'm good, I'm fine. But I was like, it actually could be cool. I was lonely, right? I mean, COVID was lonely. I enjoy people and was like, it might be nice to have a team, work with people again and make money. I had never actually built a business. Okay, I left my job in the fall of 2019 to build a photography business. Then COVID hit. So the business stuff never really happened. Okay. Um, I turned very quickly to art, because of that. So when the world was resettling, I'll say, I didn't have clients. I didn't have any of that. I had been really just focusing on art. So,
Right.
okay, all right, let me take this job. This could work. I don't have to worry about the business of photography. I could focus on my book. Um, and this will be perfect. No, it wasn't. It was way too much. This was all happening while we were displaced from our house that I
Right.
decided to take on this job and work on my book with my two kids. And it was insane. And so at the end of the day, I made the decision to quit that job. I was only there a few months. It's pretty sad. But I think that I have had a challenging time balancing all the things. I've
Yeah.
had a challenging time. So I hate that I don't think I'm answering this question very,
No, I
but
think you are. I appreciate that honesty. I don't think most
yeah,
people be honest about that.
I don't know how I worked full time with these children before. Like I know I did it. I did it, but I don't know how I did it.
Like clearly you did it, but
It. But I also wasn't an author at the time, right? So I'm in the season now where I'm trying to figure out, okay, I have grown accustomed to being very dialed in with my kids more than I ever have because I haven't worked a regular job since, well, 2019 and then that short period in 2022.
right.
So I've become very dialed into like everything going on with them. I don't know how to give that up. I don't want to give that up. Um, and so as I figure out what's next, I'm trying to cultivate a lifestyle that allows me to continue to be dialed in with them,
Yeah.
focus on this book, focus on other projects. Um, it's hard. I haven't figured that out. I'm sorry, whoever asked that question. I feel like I failed.
No, no, no. It's good because this is the reality of the process. Like, there's gonna be this era of motherhood and balancing life in general, even if you're not this excellent photographer with books and businesses to like keep track of, you still are balancing a whole life.
My kids are a lot. They're like a lot. And as they get older, they're more independent, but teenage years, middle school years are a different kind of animal. Okay. And I feel like I had to have my ear to the ground.
Yeah.
So I'm not missing critical things.
Did you
So,
photograph them for the book?
okay, a little bit. They only have one photo each in the book, which I'm pretty sad about, but I couldn't really shoot them and wash their hair the way that you know what I mean?
Right.
So I have like some shots of them where I'm not in the photo or my hands aren't in the photo, but there are a couple of pictures of them, which I'm happy about. Um, so I wanted more. I will say I wanted more pictures of everybody in here. I'm going to tell you the process of selecting images from this book was brutal, brutal. It was
I know it's
I
hard.
selected every single photo, which I didn't think I was going to do. I thought that the editor would like kind of have more like say. I don't know why. I don't know why I thought that, but I'm glad that I was able to choose all the pictures, but I
Yeah.
hate it because I have thousands, as you can imagine, thousands.
Oh,
And so I was able to pick, I guess, what were the kind of most emotive photos of my kids, kind of showing their faces. Um,
yeah.
and so I have those two of them. But yeah.
Did the editor give you a limit? Like say, okay, we need you to pick 55 photos or something like that?
Okay. That okay, the bookmaking process, I didn't know what it was going to be. They kind of prime me for it. Of course, you do your part. You take the pictures, you write the stuff. You and your editor edit the book. There's a proofreader, there's a copy editor, there's a designer who helps you lay everything out. There is a team that helps you pick the cover. There are all these things. Along the way in the process, there are little bits and nuggets of things that I was learning along the way. One
Oh,
of those is the number of photos that go in this book. And so I'm envisioning a lot more pictures. So I'm thinking like, I don't know, 20 pictures per family, which now I realize is way too many.
mm,
I and as we were laying out the book, okay, is when I really realized how many pictures were actually going in here. And I
yeah.
remember asking, like, wait a minute, I thought that we were doing this many. Because in the contract, there was a certain number of photos listed. But I also recognize that some of those pictures are smaller. If I had, I have some full bleed images, some very large images. But if all the images were really small, then yeah, I would have had all of those. But I didn't want them all to be small. I wanted some to be big and some to be,
Yeah.
variety. So that was so yeah, there's a limit because there are only so many pages that can go in the book. And sometimes like your vision and what you want meets reality. And it's hard.
Yeah.
That was a hard day realizing that I had to cut so many pictures. That was
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, Tamisha, we are running out of time. So I think I want to wrap up with asking you, like, what do you feel is something you're looking forward to, maybe with this book or maybe a different project you have? Do we got a little surprise coming?
okay. Okay. Lord, there's so much to say here. So I'm still in the beginning stages of the book. I've now learned that it's like a 3 year long, like that's like the early days is like 3 years. I'm thinking it's the first month. It's like the first year to 3 years.
Right.
And so there's quite a journey I still have. There are a lot of things that I want for this book. I really want to see it create an impact. That's what I'm most excited about. The responses I've been getting have been the most rewarding. They're everything I ever could have imagined. And I just want to see more of that happening, more freedom, just people being able to see wash day as a beautiful ritual, a beautiful part of our culture versus a burden, which is it can be that. So I'm not saying it's not, but just to try to reclaim some of that beauty in our rituals.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to say about that. It's all in the introduction of the book. As far as next projects, I'm going to tell you what, I have a lot of projects that I want to
Yes.
do. And I've already started talking to my agent. And again, having a good agent, it matters because I'm able to take her ideas and she can give me real feedback about whether or not she thinks this is marketable, what edit, all of that stuff. And so I've got some stuff that I want to start working on, but I have realized that being an author is like a full-time gig.
Yeah.
Um, I thought that you hand off the book to the publisher and they do the things and you move
Right.
on.
And it's like, okay, I'm about to go write my next book. Bye.
No, I'm having meetings with the marketing team, the publicist regularly. We're talking about who are we pitching the book to because at the end of the day, you got to have media, you got to have publicity, you got to have people putting
Yes.
the book out there and making sure people know it's there so they buy it. So I didn't realize how much work that was. And so a lot of my other projects that I want to work on are on hold. But the next project that I want to do, I really want to focus on texturism.
Yeah.
Just really just want to focus on that and dig into that even deeper. Like I get into that in this book, but I just think there's a lot of work to be done with the texture hierarchies that we still, suffer from.
Yeah,
Good
definitely.
hair, bad hair is still alive, even though we don't use that terminology. It's still there. We can't
Right.
deny it. And I think there's a lot of freedom in confronting those. conversations. I also want to do a project on colorism. Like
Mm.
I'm really into those two isms.
Yeah, I mean, there are topics that are so critical and important in our cultures. I feel like
Yeah.
across the diaspora in a lot of different kind of ways. So this work is very important. And I wish I could talk to you for a whole another hour because I still got more questions. But I'm
Yeah.
so grateful for the time that we had today. I feel like I learned so much. I'm inspired. I want to make a photo book myself. So I really appreciate all this insight. And I know there are a ton of people in the audience and the chat today that also wanted this information. So thank you so much, Tomesha.
And feel free to reach out to me. I love talking about this. And if I can be of any help, because I know there's a lot that I didn't say. We only had an hour and I can like go like this. But feel free to reach out. I would love to help anyone that I can help.
Yes, so when y'all do reach out to Tomesha, make sure you use that hashtag BWP Summit. That way you get entered into the giveaway that we've been doing all weekend because shout out to our sponsor, Adobe Lightroom. They are giving away a free year of the photography plan. So that has Photoshop and Lightroom in it. And don't forget, you can also order Wash Day at Tomesha's website. We dropped that in the chat for you. Make sure you copy that. And we'll see you in our next conversation. Oh, before we go, I keep forgetting at the end of every conversation. I want to take a picture. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, yeah, let's do it.
Well, I'll do it while we're saying bye. Okay. All right. Thanks again, y'all. We'll see you later. Bye.
Wait, did we do it?
Yeah, I just did it. Hold on, wait. I'll do it again. I'll do it again.
Okay.
Okay. See y'all later. Perfect. Thanks, Tomesha.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure.